Welcome to the Gracewriters Podcast, Christian writers changing popular culture. Hit subscribe on your favourite podcast player so you never miss an episode. And find show notes, useful links and a full transcript at gracewriters.com. Today on the podcast, publicist and author Jason Jones on writing, publishing and marketing Christmas-themed books. I'm Belinda Pollard. I'm an author, editor and book coach with a theology degree and 20 years in the publishing industry. I blog for writers at smallbluedog.com, and you can find links to my books, blogs and online courses at belindapollard.com.
Hi, my name is Alison Young. I'm a former early childhood educator with 4 adult children. Aside from writing, my other passion is photography, and as part of the media team at my local church, I have the privilege of capturing God moments both big and small. I write contemporary romance under the pen name Alison Joy, and you can find out more about me at alisonjoywriter.com.
Hi, I'm Danita Bundy. For the past 20 years, I've been using my theology degree to underpin my preaching and more recently to inspire my urban fantasy series, Armour of Light. You can find out more about me, my books, book covers and blog at danitabundy.com, DONITABUNDY. Jason Jones is the founder of Jones Literary, working with authors and publishers around the world, producers and editors at some of America's major news outlets, and hundreds of faith-based media outlets. His experience in publishing includes 6 years with Thomas Nelson, one of the world's largest and oldest Christian publishing houses, where he led campaigns for 11 New York Times best-selling titles. Jason is also host of the Book Publicist Podcast. Welcome to Gracewriters, Jason, and Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Danita. Merry Christmas to you.
You've got such an extensive experience in publishing and publicity. We'd love to know where it all began for you.
Well, it all began for me 2007. I moved to Nashville from Memphis and started my career in publishing at Thomas Nelson, as you mentioned. It was a circuitous route for me into the publishing world, a little bit messy the way that I got here. Wasn't necessarily even my plan. I had been out of school, out of college at that point by 11 or 12 years, and had started down a little bit different path, still in PR. Publishing was never something that was really in my sights, but God had other plans, and I ended up in publishing at Thomas Nelson, and the rest is history. I worked in professional baseball for 6 years, and got married, started a family, figured out that baseball was not a career that lent itself to the best family life, a lot of time on the road, long hours, and wasn't what I wanted. So got out of baseball. Worked in corporate PR for a couple of years, and then made a really, really terrible career decision and decided I wanted to sell real estate and make a lot of money and chase after all the wrong things. And I did that for a very, very short time before I crashed and burned, and it didn't work out, and found myself looking for work in 2007. And that was when Thomas Nelson came onto my radar. Got that job, moved to Nashville. But humbling experience, went back a few steps, but sometimes that's the best thing for us. And it was never something I set out to do, but it's turned out to be a really wonderful thing.
Do you think you would have gone into non-Christian media if the opportunity been there, or was just because it was Christian media, that's the way you went?
No, at that point in my life, I was looking for, a PR job or a communications broadcasting, job, looking at a lot of different areas, not necessarily to get back into sports because I've been there and done that. But, I had also had a great job as a PR director in Memphis at an agency that had a lot of great accounts that, I took care of there, and was hoping to maybe find something else like that. But, like I said, I had a 3-year-old at home, and my wife was pregnant with our second child, and found myself without a job. And at that point, you can't be too picky, and stumbled on the Thomas Nelson job listing and thought, what the heck, I'm a believer. I've read a lot of these books that it looks like I will be working on. Let's drive to Nashville and interview for it. And I did, and changed my life. It's been great. But no, it wasn't my plan. I didn't set out after I graduated college to looking for a career in Christian publishing. I can't imagine doing anything else right now where I would be able to have the relationships that I have and make the impact that I do. And just being able to get, God's word and some of these authors' works in front of people. It's really important work. So I love to serve, and I believe that what we're doing is serving the Lord, but also serving, these authors that have worked for years, sometimes putting together their life's work and putting together this message that they feel so important.
I'm thinking you've been in PR and publicity for quite a few years there, and you would have seen a lot of changes because PR has changed enormously, hasn't it? For example, the virtual collapse of newspapers as a source. Everybody's reading their news online these days. How have you kept up with that, and what tips can you offer to authors out there who are also trying to get their head around all of that?
Honestly, I don't know if I have kept up with it. We're doing the best we can. I feel like my hair's on fire, hanging on by the skin of my teeth, just figuring out what's the newest and latest place for people to be. When I first started at Nelson, I remember one of my first few days there, they sat me down and handed me 4 or 5 pieces of paper stapled together, say, get on the phone, start calling these folks. These are your contacts. Here's a fax machine over here. This is only 2007. This is not that long ago. One of my first trips with the team from Nelson, remember we went to New York and we were sitting in the office of a producer at Fox News. And I remember asking him if he was on Twitter, and he told me he thought that was the stupidest thing in the world. Why would he do that? What is there for me on Twitter? And soon after, we know what happened, but it's changed so much. I mean, it's a completely different job at this point. Used to have, you had that grace period, and the newspaper won't be out till tomorrow morning. I've got a certain number of hours to get this information in front of this person. And, but now news breaks on Twitter and on, or on X or on social media. And so it's really, our outlets a lot of times are following, they're chasing what they see on social. So that's where we, end up breaking a lot of things. One of the biggest problems we run into is authors that just don't want to participate in that. And I understand. But I don't want to say you can't succeed without it, but it's pretty tough to succeed without it. You got to engage people, and you got to be in the stream. You got to know what's happening and engaging with other authors and readers. So it's hard to succeed without it. But yeah, the job has changed so much. It's the amount of content we've got to push out into the world. People are consuming so much information. If you don't stay in front of them, they're just flooded with other information and other authors and content that are. It sounds a little overwhelming, and it is, and it can be exhausting. But at the end of the day, you can step out of that. If you've engaged long enough and in the right places and in the right ways, you create an audience for yourself, a certain number of followers, readers, people that are of like mind. And now you've got an audience, a group of people, readers of your own that you can engage and that will share you. So it's not something you have to do necessarily forever.
For a new writer, is there like a classic publicity process to go through? Is it different depending on the book and the situation?
It is. Yeah, it is different depending on the book or the situation. But I think the biggest key is to not wait until your book's a month from release before you start to think about all of these things. Ideally, you're a year or 2 years out and you're already following, reviewers or journalists that you're hoping to get, in front of at some point. You're engaging them on social. You're watching and listening to those shows, putting together those lists, and you're kind of starting to build that publicity and kind of PR mechanism. You're somebody they've seen and heard from for a while. Much better chance that they're going to buy your book. So yeah, just getting out ahead of it, I think, is the biggest key. Most of the books we work on are with publishing houses that will reach out to us and say, hey, Jason, we've got a book that's releasing in 4 months. We'd love for you guys to jump in and help us with the release. Can you do that? Yeah, we'll start in 30 days. We'll work 90 or 120 days to do radio and TV and podcasts and get reviews in online outlets. And that's kind of the cycle. And then, every quarter the publishing house is on to the next catalog. If you're one of the authors being published by that house, you have to know that they're going to do the best they can do, but you're one of 20, 25, 30 authors on their list that quarter. And so you're probably just going to skim the surface. They're going to let their main, list of outlets know, hey, here's our 20 authors this quarter. Anybody you see that you like. And if you really want to dig deeper, then that's going to fall onto your shoulders or onto mine. Mm-hmm. That's really, the best chance you have to do a significant amount of radio or TV or podcast.
Is that a bit of a shock for some authors? Are they expecting that the publisher will take care of it all?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Some promises are sometimes made in the acquisitions phase. Hey, we'll do this. We'll take you here. We'll introduce you to this person. We'll get you on this show. And, you get acquired, a year later, your book's hitting the shelf. Some of those people have moved on. Some of those promises aren't kept, things have been lost in the pile. And it's just not the case. You got to engage over a long period of time. You got to start by doing some local outlets, some smaller stuff, smaller podcasts, get some seasoning, get your feet wet. And use those smaller shows to pitch bigger shows. You got to keep your content relevant. Why does it matter, in terms of what's happening in our culture today and then what's in the headlines? Why does my message matter? You got to stay out there. People are a bit dismayed and overwhelmed and surprised and expect a little more. And great. Now what do I do? I thought the publisher was going to bring more to the table, and they're not. And I'm frustrated, what do I do? And so that's sometimes where we come in too. Probably 75-80% of our work is with publishing houses. But we do have, we work with some ministries and nonprofits as well. And we have some independent authors that we work with, folks that may be, better resourced, I guess you could say. What we do is not cheap. I'll be the first to admit that. It's very, very time consuming work. And so we have to charge, what we have to charge for it. What I recommend is, again, starting smaller, starting local. You're always most relevant at home. Start local, do some interviews there, some podcasts, some local TV, some local radio, and then just start working your way up that ladder. The chances of you having your first interview be on the set of the Today Show are practically nothing, zero. And you wouldn't want to be, because the thing is, it's not going to be your best interview. You want to do several interviews before you are in that big spotlight, because you're going to be better. The way the publishing industry's changed now too is that the release dates, aren't maybe what they used to be. Back when I started at Nelson, we planned all of our publicity so that all the big media hits were a week or two before or a week or two after the book hit shelves, because we sold all those books into those brick and mortar bookstores, and if they weren't moving, they pack them up and send them back. But now it's, most books are bought on Amazon, and they're available at, print on demand. You get them whenever you want. It's another way that the industry's changed, and it's trickled down, to what we do. So books are, relevant for a longer period of time. So your window's a little bit bigger.
You've given us some great advice about getting out there, using social media, starting local. But is there somewhere, or is there a toolkit somewhere that people can go to say, I can do this myself. I have to do this myself. How do I do it?
We were approached by so many self-published authors, starting 2-3 years back, that we just couldn't help. We didn't have anything built out or put in place to help them. Why don't we just give you some of the tools that we use? Why don't we give you our media list? Why don't I build you a press kit? Why don't we do a few consult calls? Why don't we, I've got all these email scripts. I can give you, the same email scripts that we use really to pitch media. I can hand all these things to you, and you can do it yourself. Because the thing that I don't have is time to work with 15 or 16 or 20 self-published authors every month. And not to say that those folks have all the time in the world either, but if they have the tools and resources, they can, as they're able, pitch media. So yeah, we've put together those tools. And I don't know of anybody else that's done that yet. I think at some point, probably really soon, it's, other folks are going to catch up. But right now we've got those available. It's a lot of work. But if you're hitting the right people at the right time with relevant information, compelling information, and you're persistent and professional, in doing that, you stay in front, you will do some media. Yeah, those things are available on actually our website, localprtoolkit.com is the website. Full transparency, I'm not selling my entire media list, but we do have a list of Christian media, podcasters, TV and radio personalities. And then we also will build out a list of media in your local market. And you've also got everything you need to help do PR for your second book and your third and your fourth.
Does it work better for nonfiction authors, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it is a little easier for nonfiction authors. Yeah, it is, because it's so much easier to tie your content and your messaging back to the news cycle. Fiction can be tougher. There's a list of reviewers, social media influencers and folks that we put together, and we have that available. And your really savvy fiction author can take the research they've done to write their book, or their particular expertise, whether it's tech or they're a sci-fi writer and they've spent years researching this particular technology or whatever it is. You can take that and apply it to, what's happening in the headlines today, and position yourself as an expert in that way. But for the most part, fiction, it's still reviews, and it's still trade publications and those kinds of things. But we have help for those folks too.
So, Jason, we're getting closer to Christmas. So we have to ask, what about seasonal writing? Is there a way writers can tap into the seasonal market?
You really need to be working on, if you're talking about pitching media and getting coverage around, the holidays, that's something you need to start doing in, June, July, August. Get ahead of the game, because at this point, you get into the holiday season and you're way too late. December, most media folks are out. They're on vacation like the rest of us. They're running their best of shows. And really the media blackout starts around Thanksgiving. It's or here in the States anyway. It's Black Friday. And from there forward through the first of the year, it's just a vacuum, so you really got to start thinking way back into early fall. And the other thing I would say too is, as you're writing that kind of material, try not to date it, and there's a lot of that kind of content out there, I guess. So don't be discouraged if this Christmas, you don't land the kind of coverage that you were hoping for. You don't sell quite as many books, because there's an opportunity to maybe recover your book, or start earlier next year and jump right back out there. But that's the key to the whole thing, is getting to the front of the line and starting early. Mm-hmm. And then just journaling too. Take notes this year. Maybe if you got a book and you really wish that you'd done a better job marketing your book around the holidays, take note of where you're seeing that coverage. Who is it out there on television, radio, podcasts are doing that kind of programming, and take note of who they're having on, and follow those authors. What other shows are they doing? And just really set yourself up for success next year. Is the best advice that I can give.
Is it worthwhile to aim for that seasonal thing, or is you better off focusing your attention on other cycles?
Well, the great thing about holiday related content, same thing with Easter stuff. I mean, it's relevant every year. Message is never not going to be relevant. It's never going to change. We look for that same kind of content every year. So that's the advantage. I think absolutely it is. We have, there are books that we've all read, that every Christmas they find themselves back, in front of us. So yeah, absolutely. It's worth it. But the media, they're always looking for it. And it's usually a softer news cycle too. A lot of the things that we are covering, and writing about and broadcasting 24/7, all the atrocities and awful things happening around the world. We all kind of take a break from that for 3 or 4 weeks around the holidays. And, so it is a great time if you've got something softer, kind of content to pitch and get yourself out there, because it's tough to break through that, coverage of the economy, or, the war coverage or whatever it is throughout the rest of the year.
It is the biggest time of year for book sales, isn't it? The lead up to Christmas.
Christmas, our work slows down a little bit, but book sales don't necessarily. I'm already pitching books for January because I don't have anything really that's Christmas specific. So I'm getting ahead of the game for January. I'm going to go ahead and get my folks front of the line. So when everyone gets back from vacation, January 3rd or 4th, and they've got this stack of emails and books on their desk, my folks are already scheduled, So I'm not going to kind of sit back and mope about not being able to get coverage during Christmas. I'm just going to go ahead and circle around and start working on January.
One of the things I'm wondering about, because it, as you say, you're not going to get on the Today Show as a new author, but there's a million podcasts. And those podcasts are hungry for good, interesting people to interview on whatever their topic and theme is. Do podcast appearances sell books? Should we be looking for that?
Yes, absolutely. You're better off, honestly. Not always, but I mean, doing podcasts, and you're better off doing a podcast, the right podcast, than you are doing the Today Show. I mean, those podcast listeners are loyal listeners. If that host recommends a book, they're clicking over. And so, yes, absolutely. And, podcasts have a long shelf life, easily shared. I mean, it's absolutely the best way to go. I mean, everybody wants to do the big national TV stuff, but and it does credential you, and it's great to have on your resume, and it's great to have on your press kit. It's a good experience, and yes, you can move some books, but podcast is the way to go. Absolutely, because you get on a podcast, it's a longer form interview. You get on the Today Show, you probably got 3 minutes. And a podcast can give you an hour. They can have you back next week. They can have you back regularly. They can, it's just an opportunity to cultivate a real relationship. And that's what this whole business is really about too, but and those people are the ones that are out there sharing your book too.
Couple of tips maybe for how people should find the best podcasts to be on. Is it just trial and error and doing a lot of dismal interviews before you get the ones that are really going to work? Is it?
We use a podcast database or service, where we can do all that kind of research, but it's expensive. And not just everybody can do that. I think, you're just going to have to grind it out and jump into Apple Podcasts and find podcasts that you like and listen to, and it'll list for you what are other similar shows, listen to those shows, and you're just going to have to dig for it. But the idea is too, that if you get yourself out there and you do some shows and people start to talk and circulate you and your book, your name around, all of a sudden people start looking for you, and the idea is to kind of flip that dynamic, that paradigm, so that I'm not always pushing myself out. We've had a few authors over the years that have gotten enough publicity and have become mainstream enough that we don't have to pitch them anymore. Now I'm just fielding requests. And that's the ultimate, objective. So, and it's tough. It's a slog. I mean, it's not easy work to get in there and dig through, but again, circle all the way back. That's why you got to start ahead of time, because you're just not going to get it done in a couple of weeks.
So, Jason, we're hearing a message here that it's hard work. It's a bit of a slog, and it's going to take time. So we get that, and that's good. And that's whether you're with a publicist, or whether you're traditionally published or you're self-published. We're hearing the same message, and so that's good. We're not differentiating and not playing favorites here. It's tough for everyone. But would you have any advice for or encouragement for the Grace writers who are listening to this podcast when they are trying and they're just beginning to work their way into the system to get their Grace notes into the market, including secular market, not just the Christian market?
I do not want to ever be a discouragement. This is really important work that you're doing, writing these books, and just know that, first of all, remember why you're doing this. I have a lot of people that, come to me and say, I didn't do this to make a lot of money. I hope we sell some books, but I really did it because I felt called to do it. I felt it was important that this message got, out there. God will do with it what he will. And I think that's true. We have to remember that, why we're doing this. So we can slow down, we can relax. If we sell 1 million books, that's great. But, be obedient, do the work, do what you can, walk it out, put it out there, and just trust that God will do with it what he will. And that's all we can do. But it's about engagement and just stay in the game. You're going to outlast a lot of people, if you will. A lot of other people are going to give up. But if you're in this for the right reason and you really do want to engage people and change lives and put important, impactful, meaningful content in front of people, just do that. Do it on your social feed and just keep having conversations and just stay in the game, and it will happen for you. I've got kids that are, in the entertainment, industry, and they're talented and they work hard, but there's a lot of people that are talented and work hard. Just stick with it. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, and don't get discouraged, and just keep going. And you will outlast a lot of people, and it will happen. And it won't take forever. And I don't mean to sound like it, it's going to take years and years and years. Good content finds its way, it really does. Really, really. There may be a million books out there, but there's not a million good books out there, and if you sell enough books to the right people, and your content is really changing people's hearts, and they're going to share that. So just keep going. Remember why you do it, and just keep going, and just trust. It really is. It grows us as authors too. That having to trust every day. Did I do all this for nothing? Is anybody ever going to read this book? Just trusting that yes, they will. God will do what He will with this book. Just do my part. Walk it out. It'll happen.
What more can we do than trust and, as the saying goes, obey? So yeah, thank you, Jason. The Gracewriters slogan is Christian writers changing popular culture. What are your thoughts on this?
It has to be why we're in this, right? I mean, going back to what we just said, I think that's absolutely gets right to the point. I love it. If we're not into impact culture, then why are we doing this? And it's culture's tough on us Christians these days, but it really is meaningful work. I think that's right on the nose.
Jason, where can our listeners find you online and get some more information?
JonesLiterary.com is our website. And then on Facebook and Instagram, we're at Jones Literary in both places. So, and I hope I didn't make this seem like an impossible task, because it really is not. It's hard work, but anything worth doing is a little bit difficult sometimes. Just we can do this.
I think it's actually really valuable what you said. It's the one who stays in the game. You can't win the game if you don't stay in the game. Right. And maybe some people, they might go into writing just for a season and for a particular project, and God's not calling them to stay in it long term, perhaps. But for those of us for whom it is really central to our heart and soul and vision and purpose, we just keep on slogging, even though what the world calls success may or may not come.
There's only 3 or 4 big national morning television shows, right? You can move through those pretty quick, and then what? You can do all 4 or 5 of them, but then what? There's a million podcasts out there. You can stay busy doing podcasts and staying in front of people forever. So get busy, And
as you say, those TV shows, you're on it for 3 minutes and then it's gone. And people are thinking, what was the name of that book? Whereas if you're on a podcast, it's just downloadable. It's out there for years. Yep. Quite different situation. Excellent. Right. Beautiful. Thank you, Jason. Really appreciate all that you've brought for us today, and lots to think about going forward. But how about I pray for you and the Gracewriters as we finish up?
That'd be wonderful. Thank you so much.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for Jason. We thank you for the circuitous route via which you brought him to publishing, because we know that along the way you were doing things. Those were not mistakes. Those were things that you were using in different ways to equip him to help authors and to increase the spread of your message and your kingdom through the work of various writers. I pray that you will bless and encourage and inspire him and lead him to doors that open to help keep getting your message, your grace notes in all their different forms out into the world. And I do pray too for all the authors out there who are listening, who are wanting to find some solutions to publicity and media appearances and stuff for their books. I pray that you'll give them inspiration, and particularly with the podcast ideas, that you will lead them to things they hadn't thought of before and open the way forward. And we ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Jason Jones, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Danita Bundy and Alison Joy. I'm Belinda Pollard, and we will see you next time on the Gracewriters Podcast. Gracewriters is run by volunteers, and we're incredibly grateful to those who have contributed financially to help keep this ministry running. Thank you so very much. If you have enjoyed this podcast and you'd like to help, please go to gracewriters.com and look for Donate in the menu. Continue today's conversation in our free online forum and find useful articles, links and resources at gracewriters.com.